Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, holding the acceptance letter in his trembling hands. The word congratulations glowed like a promise. He had worked for this moment for years. Long nights, endless exams, part-time jobs after school just to save a little for books. He had dreamed of becoming an architect since he was a boy, sketching buildings on the backs of old notebooks while others played outside. And now, finally, his dream was within reach. His parents were going to be proud. At least, that's what he thought. Downstairs, his mother was at the dining table, scrolling through her phone while his father read the newspaper. Ethan could barely contain his excitement. "Mom, Dad, I got in. I got accepted into Greendale University. Full admission." His mother looked up, smiled faintly, and went back to her phone. His father didn't even lower the paper. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Ethan waited, expecting at least a congratulations. Instead, his father folded the newspaper slowly and said, "That's good, Ethan. But your mother and I have been talking. We won't be paying for your college." For a second, Ethan thought it was a joke. "Wait, what?" His mother sighed. "You're 18 now. It's time you learn to be independent. We can't keep supporting you forever." Ethan blinked, confused. "Independent? What do you mean?" "You paid for Lily's college." His father set the paper down and gave him a cold look. "Your sister had a clear plan. You don't. Architecture. That's not stable. We can't waste money on something that may not go anywhere." The words hit him like a slap. He had spent years proving he was serious, showing them his designs, winning school contests, working odd jobs. "I've worked for this," he said quietly, his voice shaking. "I've saved some money, but it's not enough. You promised you'd help." His mother's tone hardened. "We did what we could for Lily. We don't owe you anything, Ethan. The world doesn't hand out free rides. If you want something, work for it." Ethan felt his stomach twist. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about fairness, about being treated like he mattered. He looked at them both, to people who should have been proud, but all he saw was disappointment in their eyes. His father leaned back, calm and unbothered. "If you really have what it takes, you'll make it on your own." He tried to reason with them, tried to make them understand. But they had already decided. No amount of pleading would change their minds. He went to his room and closed the door, his chest tight with anger and disbelief. He could hear them talking downstairs, their voices muffled but cruelly calm. His mother said, "This will teach him responsibility." His father replied, "He'll thank us one day." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, his mind racing. Every dream he had, every plan felt shattered. The walls of his small room seemed to close in. For years, he'd done everything right, thinking that hard work would earn him their support. But now the people who were supposed to stand beside him had turned their backs. The next morning, he packed his bag. Just a few clothes, his sketchbook, and a second-hand laptop he'd saved up for. His mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Where are you going?" "Out," he said quietly. She rolled her eyes. "Don't make this dramatic. You'll thank us later when you learn to take care of yourself." Ethan didn't answer. He walked past her and stepped out into the cool morning air. The world felt both huge and cruelly small. He had no plan, no money, no safety net. But one thing burned in his chest: determination. He would prove them wrong. One day they'd see his name and remember what they threw away. For the first few months, life was brutal. He took whatever work he could find, stocking shelves, cleaning, waiting tables. Some nights he slept in shared rooms, sometimes in cheap hostels. The exhaustion was constant, but every night before he fell asleep, he opened his laptop and studied. Free online courses, tutorials, architecture forums, anything he could learn from. He refused to let his dream die. There were moments he wanted to quit. When his pay was late, when the cold seeped through the windows, when hunger gnawed at him. But then he'd remember his father's words. "If you really have what it takes, you'll make it on your own." That sentence became fuel, burning inside him. Months turned into years. He moved from one job to another, saving every cent. When his laptop broke, he fixed it himself with used parts. When his shoes wore out, he patched them up. People around him pitied him, but he didn't care. He wasn't looking for sympathy. He was building something invisible resilience. Then, one night, while working at a construction site, he noticed a problem in the design blueprint. He quietly sketched an alternative on scrap paper and showed it to the foreman. The man raised an eyebrow, but decided to test Ethan's idea. It worked, saving the project time and money, kid, the foreman said, impressed. You've got an eye for this. You ever think about joining a firm? Ethan smiled faintly. Every day. The foreman made a call that changed everything. Within weeks, Ethan landed a small internship at a modest architecture firm. He worked harder than anyone, staying late, taking every chance to learn. His ideas stood out, his designs grew sharper, and his passion began to shine through, while others saw a job. Ethan saw a battlefield. Every blueprint was proof that he was more than what his parents had believed. Every new project was another step away from the boy they had called irresponsible. He never contacted them. He didn't send updates, didn't ask for forgiveness. He wanted them to think he had vanished, because one day, when his name was on the skyline, that silence would speak louder than any word. By his late 20s, Ethan had moved up fast. He saved, invested, and soon launched his own design firm. Clients admired his precision and calm confidence. They didn't know about the sleepless nights, the hunger, the betrayal. All they saw was success. 9 years after that night at the dinner table, Ethan stood in a gleaming office overlooking the same city that had once been too big for him. His company had just been shortlisted for a major government project. Reporters called him a rising visionary. His designs were appearing in magazines. But despite it all, part of him still carried the old wound. He never spoke of his parents, though sometimes late at night he'd imagine what they'd say if they saw him now. Pride? Regret? Maybe both. He didn't have to wonder for long. One afternoon, his assistant walked into his office holding a file. "We have a new renovation request," she said. "A couple wants to remodel their home. They requested you personally." Ethan barely looked up until she added, "Their name is Langford." He froze. The name hit him like a spark in a dry field. Langford, his parents. He hadn't heard it spoken aloud in years. Slowly, he reached for the file, scanning the address. It was the same old house, the one he had left behind 9 years ago. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. His assistant waited for instructions, unaware of the storm behind his calm expression. Finally, he closed the file and said quietly, "Tell them I'll take the project." She nodded and left, and Ethan sat there alone, staring out the window. His reflection stared back the man he had built from nothing. The anger that had once driven him was still there, but different now, sharper, quieter, controlled. 9 years ago, they had told him to be independent. They had refused to believe in him. Now they needed him to rebuild what they had lost. He leaned back in his chair, eyes cold but calm. The circle had closed. The story that began with rejection was about to return to where it started. And for the first time, Ethan didn't feel broken. He felt powerful. They had called him independent. Now he truly was more than they could ever imagine, and soon they would see just how much that word really meant. When Ethan walked into his office the next morning, the world felt heavier than usual. The file with his parents' names lay on his desk, a ghost from a past he thought he'd buried. For years, he had built his life around forgetting them. Now, fate had brought their names back to him, not as family, but as clients. He stared at the file for a long time before finally opening it. Their house was the same one he'd left behind, the red brick home with peeling paint, the cracked driveway, the small garden his mother once loved but probably no longer tended. They wanted a renovation, a fresh start. Irony couldn't have written it better. His assistant entered, holding a coffee. "Should I schedule a meeting with the Langfords?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes, schedule it for Friday." As she left, he exhaled. He had faced competitors, deadlines, and investors, but nothing had prepared him for facing his own parents again. Still, this wasn't fear. It was something deeper, a tight, cold feeling, the echo of old pain. Part of him wanted to refuse the project and forget it. But another part, the one that still remembered standing in that living room being told. He wasn't worth investing in, whispered. No, finish what they started. He spent the next few days reviewing the old house's design, sketching ideas. Each line he drew was sharp and precise, like the edges of the walls he had built inside himself. As he worked, his memories slipped through, his mother's cold smile, his father's voice calling him unrealistic. Tried to drown them out with work, but they returned again and again. Like old wounds that refused to heal. On Friday morning, Ethan drove to the house. The road looked the same, quiet, lined with tall trees, the same ones he used to walk past when coming home from school. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as he pulled into the driveway. The house stood before him, older, weaker, almost symbolic. Once it had seemed too big for him. Now it looked small. The door opened and his mother stepped out. Her hair had turned gray, her face softer with age. For a moment, she didn't recognize him. Then her eyes widened, her lips parted. "Ethan?" she whispered. He gave a polite smile. "Mrs. Langford," he said professionally. "I'm here about your renovation project." She froze, speechless. His father came out next, limping slightly. "Who?" he began, then stopped mid-sentence. Recognition hit him like a blow. The silence that followed was long, filled with everything they'd never said. Ethan broke it first. "Shall we talk inside?" The house smelled faintly of dust and old memories. The furniture hadn't changed much. Same worn-out sofa, same clock ticking too loudly on the wall. They sat awkwardly, like strangers in the same room. His mother spoke first, her voice trembling. "You've done well for yourself? Learn to be independent," Ethan replied simply. His father flinched, guilt flickering in his eyes. Ethan noticed, but said nothing. They went over the renovation plans as if nothing had happened. His tone stayed professional, his questions practical. Budget, layout, materials. But underneath, a quiet war was unfolding. Every polite word was laced with the memory of betrayal. His mother's eyes darted around, unable to meet his for long. His father's usual authority was gone. They looked smaller somehow, not because they had aged, but because Ethan had grown. When the meeting ended, his mother hesitated. "Ethan," she said softly, "we didn't mean to." He stood up before she could finish. "I'll send the updated designs by next week." He walked out, leaving the air thick with unspoken things. That night, sat in his apartment, staring at his computer screen. He couldn't focus. The images from the meeting replayed in his head, their voices, their faces. For 9 years, he had dreamed of this day. But now that it had come, it didn't feel like victory. It felt hollow, unfinished. He thought back to those early years, the nights he'd gone hungry, the times he'd patched his own shoes, the moments when he wanted to quit but didn't. His success had been born out of pain, and he had carried that pain like armor. But seeing them again stirred something different. Not anger, not even hatred, but something more dangerous. Confusion. Why did he still care? Why did their regret matter at all? The next day, his assistant asked if he wanted to decline the project. Ethan shook his head. "No, I'll do it." He wasn't sure if he wanted revenge or closure. Maybe both. He redesigned their home with precision modern lines, open spaces, light streaming in from tall glass walls. It was beautiful, everything he had once dreamed of creating. But there was symbolism in every detail. The living room had open ceilings, a reminder that truth always finds its way in. The walls were made of solid oak, strong, unbreakable. Like what he had become when he presented the design to them a week later. His parents were in awe. "This is incredible," his mother said softly, tears in her eyes. His father just nodded, too proud to speak. Ethan didn't smile. He only said construction will begin in 2 weeks. As work began, Ethan visited the site often. His parents watched from the porch as teams demolished the old walls. One afternoon, his father approached him cautiously. "Ethan," he began, voice low, "I owe you an apology. I thought I was teaching you responsibility, but I see now. I was just pushing you away." Ethan didn't respond. His silence said more than words could. His father looked down, ashamed. Your mother and I. We lost a lot after you left. The market crashed, Lily moved abroad. We thought we were doing what was best, but we ended up losing you. Ethan met his eyes. You didn't lose me, he said quietly. You gave me away. The man's face crumbled. I'm sorry. Ethan nodded slightly and went back to work. For the next few days, the house transformed rapidly. His designs brought life back into the old place. His parents watched in quiet admiration, sometimes offering small talk, sometimes standing in silence. Late one evening, as the project neared completion, Ethan stood alone inside the house. The new walls gleamed under the soft lights. It was perfect, clean, modern, peaceful. But inside him, the storm hadn't calmed. He realized then that revenge wasn't about making others suffer. It was about wanting to heal the part of yourself they broke. And now looking around, he couldn't tell if rebuilding their home was an act of forgiveness or payback. His mother walked in quietly, carrying 2 cups of tea. You've built something beautiful, she said. I wish we had believed in you sooner. Ethan looked at her. The woman who once called him unrealistic now stood humbled, fragile. He could see the regret in her eyes, but also fear that he'd never forgive them. He took the cup and nodded. I built what I needed to survive, he said simply. That night, he drove home in silence. The city lights blurred past his window, and for the first time in years, he let himself feel the weight of everything the years lost. The words unsaid, the family that no longer felt like family. Revenge had fueled him. But now that he was face to face with those who caused his pain, he saw the truth. Revenge wasn't power. It was poison disguised as purpose, still. He couldn't deny the satisfaction in knowing they finally saw him, not as a burden, but as someone they couldn't ignore. That was the justice he'd wanted. Not cruelty, just recognition. Weeks later, when the renovation was done, Ethan walked through the finished house one last time. It looked nothing like the place he had left behind. His parents stood near the door, silent, emotional. His father reached out a hand. Thank you, son, he said, voice breaking. Ethan hesitated, then shook his hand. You're welcome, he said, his tone calm but distant. He turned to his mother, who whispered, We're proud of you. He smiled faintly. You should be. You built this too, just not the way you think. And with that, he walked out, leaving them in the home that symbolized everything they had lost and everything he had gained. As he got into his car and drove away, the anger that had once ruled his life began to fade. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt free. The boy who had left that house 9 years ago in anger was gone. The man driving away now was independent, not because they had forced him to be, but because he had chosen to be. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the freshly built house, its glass walls shining like a mirror to Ethan's journey. The renovation was complete. Every line, every detail reflected his precision and patience. Standing across the street, Ethan studied it silently. The house that once symbolized rejection was now a masterpiece carrying his name. It was perfect. Yet inside him, something still felt unfinished. His phone buzzed. It was a message from his father. We'd like to see you. Dinner tonight? For a long moment, Ethan didn't reply. Part of him wanted to delete the message and move on. He had already done what he came to do. Rebuild their home. Rebuild himself. But curiosity tugged at him. Maybe he needed to see the end of it. So he typed back a simple answer. I'll be there. That evening, as he drove to the house, the city lights glimmered around him. His reflection in the window showed a man who had everything he once dreamed of: success, respect, control. But beneath that calm surface, memories still stirred. The boy who had left this house 9 years ago still lived somewhere inside him. Watching, waiting. When he reached the driveway, his parents were already outside. His father looked smaller, thinner, but his eyes carried a cautious warmth. His mother wore a nervous smile, like someone afraid of saying the wrong thing. Ethan, she said softly, we're glad you came. He nodded, polite but distant. Inside, the house was glowing with soft lights and new furniture. The transformation was stunning, almost unreal. His mother gestured proudly. It's beautiful. You've given this house new life. Ethan looked around. The house was never the problem, he said quietly. It was what happened inside it. His father cleared his throat. You're right. And that's why we asked you here. We want to talk properly this time. They sat down at the table, just like the night they told him they wouldn't pay for college. But now the air felt different, heavier, but honest. His father started first. Ethan, when you left, I thought I was doing the right thing. I believed hardship would make you stronger. But I was wrong. I didn't make you strong, I made you hate us. Ethan stared at the table, silent. His mother's eyes glistened. We thought we were teaching you independence, she said, her voice shaking. We didn't realize we were breaking something we couldn't fix. He took a deep breath. You didn't just break something, he said, his tone calm but steady. You broke me. Every night I spent working 2 jobs. Every time I went hungry, I kept asking myself what I did wrong. I wanted to hate you, but I couldn't. I just wanted you to see me. His father's hands trembled slightly. We see you now, he whispered. We've seen what you became, and we're proud. Ethan looked up, meeting his father's eyes. You're proud because I succeeded. But would you still be proud if I had failed? The question hung in the air like a blade. His parents had no answer. For a moment, no one spoke. The ticking of the wall clock filled the silence. Then Ethan stood up and walked to the large window. The reflection of the 3 of them shimmered in the glass. Past and present facing each other. I spent years planning what I'd do if I ever saw you again, he said softly. Sometimes I wanted to humiliate you. Other times I wanted to show you I didn't need you. But standing here now? He paused, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. I realize that revenge doesn't heal anything. It just keeps you chained to the same pain. His mother wiped her tears. Then why did you help us? Ethan turned, his expression calm. Because this house isn't for you. It's for me. It's proof that I didn't let what you did define who I became. His father lowered his head, guilt written across his face. I wish we could undo it. But we can't. All we can do is ask for forgiveness. Ethan walked back to the table and sat down. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means I stop letting the past control me. His mother reached across the table, hesitating before touching his hand. We don't deserve your kindness. He met her gaze. Maybe not. But I deserve peace. They sat there quietly for a long time. Outside, the city lights flickered in the distance like 1,000 small reminders that life always moves forward. No matter how deep the scars run. Later that night, Ethan stepped out onto the porch. The air was cool, the world calm. His father joined him, leaning on the railing. You've built something incredible, Ethan. I wish I had believed in you then. Ethan's eyes stayed on the horizon. You didn't believe in me because you couldn't see past your own fear. You were scared I'd fail, and you didn't want to carry that blame. His father sighed. You're right. I thought I was saving you from disappointment. But all I did was create a different kind of failure. Ethan turned to him. I'm not angry anymore. But you should know something. I didn't make it because of you. I made it despite you. His father nodded slowly, accepting the truth like a weight he'd carried too long. And that's why you're stronger than I ever was. They stood there in silence. 2 men bound by blood but divided by choices. Eventually, Ethan said goodbye and walked to his car. His mother hugged him tightly at the door, whispering, Don't be a stranger. He didn't promise anything. He just smiled faintly and said, Take care of yourselves. As he drove away, the house glowed behind him, no longer a place of bitterness, but a monument of what he had overcome. The road stretched out ahead, endless and free. For the first time, Ethan felt light. The burden he had carried for 9 years had finally begun to lift. Weeks passed and life returned to its rhythm. Ethan focused on his firm, taking on new projects and mentoring young designers. He found peace in helping others, giving them the encouragement he once wished someone had given him. His story became quiet motivation for his team, though he never spoke of the past. People could sense the strength forged from struggle. One evening, while reviewing a project, he received a letter handwritten from his father. It read, "We sold the house and moved closer to the coast. Your mother and I wanted to start fresh. We'll never be able to undo what we did, but we'll spend the rest of our lives trying to be the parents you deserved. Thank you for giving us a chance to see who you became." Ethan folded the letter and set it aside. He didn't cry, but he smiled a real quiet smile. He didn't need their apology anymore. He had already healed Dot years later. When a young architect asked him during an interview what motivated him to succeed, Ethan paused before answering. "People often think success is about proving others wrong," he said. "But real success is about proving yourself right, that you can survive, grow, and forgive without losing who you are." The audience went silent, listening to the weight in his voice. Ethan smiled slightly and added, "Revenge feels powerful, but peace lasts longer." That night, as he walked home through the city lights, the world felt different, softer, quieter. The scars of his past were still there, but they no longer hurt. They were reminders of how far he'd come. He had turned pain into strength, betrayal into wisdom. Ethan stopped on a bridge overlooking the skyline. The buildings he had designed standing tall against the night sky. The reflection in the water shimmered, calm and steady. He whispered to himself, "This is independence." Not the kind his parents had forced on him, cold and lonely, but the kind he had built through perseverance, forgiveness, and understanding. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the city, Ethan felt a sense of closure. The boy who once walked away with nothing had finally found everything he ever needed. Not in revenge, not in success, but in peace. Because in the end, true independence wasn't proving others wrong. It was knowing that you no longer needed to